In a recent Ontario family court ruling, Regional Senior Justice Callum MacLeod addressed a request that felt more like satire than actual law. The case, Parker v. King, involved a litigant who insisted on bringing an albino ball python named Rico into the courtroom, claiming the animal was a necessary emotional support. The details of the claim quickly fell apart. The accreditation for Rico came from a fake registry. It reflects a growing trend in our institutions, the tendency to prioritize the performance of identity over the actual work of psychological recovery. This shift in language has its roots in the neurodiversity movement, which has spent 30 years successfully challenging the stigma surrounding neurological differences. By reframing conditions like ADHD and autism as part of the natural range of human variation, rather than simple defects, the movement brought essential compassion to clinical spaces. The call to reduce stigma has transformed into a refusal to acknowledge impairment at all. We now see an institutional reluctance to distinguish between being different and being dysfunctional. When every distress is labeled a difference that must be accommodated, the concept of a disorder begins to vanish. This commitment to unconditional validation often traps individuals in their current state. By focusing entirely on making the world adapt, we have quietly abandoned the goal of helping people actually get better. Clinical psychology has long understood that the way we treat anxiety determines whether it fades or festers. It comes down to avoidance versus exposure. This graph shows the mechanics of avoidance. When an individual encounters a trigger and retreats, they feel immediate relief. But because avoidance is reinforced, the overall baseline of anxiety creeps upward. Compare that to exposure therapy. When we require individuals to face the fear directly, the anxiety spikes intensely in the moment. However, as the brain learns it can survive, the overall baseline of anxiety subsides. Modern institutional habits often ignore this math. By defaulting to constant accommodation, we are essentially subsidizing avoidance and entrenching the very symptoms we want to alleviate. Constant accommodation may feel humane in the short term, but it crowds out the difficult, necessary work of psychological change. If the clinical evidence for total accommodation is so weak, we have to ask why it's everywhere. The answer lies in the commercialization of mental health identity. A vast network of online certifications and quasi-medical registries has appeared. These businesses profit by turning distress into official, protected status. Emotional support animals occupy the center of this market. While some people see genuine benefits, the scientific evidence is inconsistent and varies wildly from person to person. They are rarely a viable replacement for structured treatment. Nevertheless, these micro-industries thrive by translating a customer's feelings into legal and social entitlements, often with very little oversight. When we allow commercial performance to stand in for therapeutic support, we lose our ability to help those who are truly in need. To see what we're missing, we can look back at how ancient traditions managed human suffering without the benefit of clinical labels. In Confucian thought, the core of development is shu shen, or self-cultivation. This isn't about self-expression, it's about the disciplined refinement of your character to meet the demands of the world. The Christian tradition similarly views healing as a transformation of the mind. Suffering is something to be confronted and transcended, not something to be protected as a permanent identity. These traditions differ in their theology, but they agree on a central point. Stability comes from disciplining the self to harmonize with reality, rather than demanding that reality bend to the self. This isn't a call for a return to stigma or cruelty. Many people live with enduring conditions that require ongoing, practical support from society. But there is a hidden cost to constant affirmation. Telling a suffering person that they are incapable of change and that only the world can adapt is a subtle form of abandonment. True care is much more demanding. It supports a person's limitations while simultaneously believing in their capacity for growth. It creates space for difference without losing the ability to identify when a person is genuinely struggling to function. The judge who barred the python from the courtroom made a small legal decision, but he highlighted a massive cultural problem. When a society can no longer distinguish between helping someone heal and validating their every impulse, it has effectively given up on them. This isn't an act of kindness, it is an act of resignation to their suffering.